Hello, everyone. So we have two more speakers up. Up next, we have Kirsten Verclas. Did I say that right?
Yes.
All right. Kirsten is the manager director of the National Association for State Energy Officials, for short, NACIO, where she leads electricity program, which informs and educates the state on issues related to generation, transmission, and distribution. And NACIO's energy security program focuses on resilience, energy, security planning, and cybersecurity. Prior to NACIO, Ms. Verclas was an ORISE Science and Technology Policy Fellow at the U.S. Department of Energy. And I would like to welcome you.
Thank you.
And then after that, we have Ms. Grace Lowe. Sorry, 1 second. Who is the Senior Program Manager for NACIO, who supports a variety of clean energy projects and programs covering low-income solar, workforce development and diversity, and clean electricity. So welcome, ladies. We're happy to have you here. So, Kirsten, if you would like to begin.
Sure. I'll share our slide deck from my end if that works. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Perfect. All right. So I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I'm really bummed, but I have two small children and schools and daycares out today because of the snow. So I have to do this from afar, but I'm excited to have this conversation with you all and tell you a little bit about NASIO, what we do in terms of solar, and to hear your questions and hopefully also answer some of your questions. So what Grace and I thought we would do real quick is, after the generous introduction already from your colleague, we will go over some of the background on NASIO and who state energy offices are and who we serve, and then talk about two projects that we do on the solar side. One is on solar and cybersecurity, and one is on community solar. And then hopefully we'll have enough time for question and answers, and can also go a little bit into my personal and professional background and how I ended up where I am. So about NASIO, we are the National Association of State Energy Officials. We are the only national nonprofit association for the governor-designated energy officials from all of the 56 states, the DC, the District of Columbia, and the territories. We serve as a resource on all kinds of energy topics, and I'll show you the breadth of the energy topics in just a second. But we provide regional dialogues. We have a lot of topical committees. We facilitate peer learning and sharing between our members. And I really like to liken our members, the state and territory energy offices, to sort of mini Department of Energies. So you have FERC on the national level and DOE. And then on the state level, you have the PUCs that are kind of like FERC, and then you have the state energy offices who are kind of like Department of Energies. And we do have very big members like the California Energy Commission. And we have also very small members that have a staff of 1 or 2. So it is a very big range of energy offices, and they sit in different places. Some of them are their own state entity, like the California Energy Commission or the NYSERDA. And some sit in the Department of Commerce or the Department of Environmental Protection, or some of them are linked to the PUCs. So it's a very different flavor of what they all do. They work on a bunch of different things. We are going to talk about solar and electricity today, but they also work on buildings and building electrification. They work on transportation and EVs. They think about financing programs. They think about research and development and deployment. They think about hazards and how to respond to natural and man-made disasters. And they also think about how to support workforce and equity considerations in the energy space. we are having a lot of different projects on solar, but we wanted to highlight a couple today. And one of them we call CATS. It's the Cybersecurity Advisory Team for State Solar. And it was really, it's done together with NERUC, who is kind of our companion organization. We represent the state energy offices and they represent the public utility commissions. The impetus for the project was really thinking about what are the state energy offices and public utility commissions' role in cybersecurity? Why should they care? We got a lot of questions from our members as distributed energy resources and solar is increasing. Like, how can we make that safe? What are some of the cyber considerations that we should be thinking about? And so our members, both on the state energy office and PUC sides, they really look to support public-private cyber risk mitigation and resiliency. In the case of the PUC, they also review and approve investments on utility cybersecurity. A lot of them are coordinating with state and federal energy intelligence and emergency management entities. So they are the ones responding. So they want to make sure that the grid is safe so they don't have to respond. And they provide analysis of real and potential energy security and sector disruptions that are potentially caused by cyber attacks to their peer policymakers and to governors. And then they also respond, as I mentioned, to cyber attacks. Colonial Pipeline, for example, being one of the more prominent, I think, examples that we all know. So we embarked on this project because, as I mentioned, DERs are increasing, and we picked solar because we sort of had to pick one, but I think the lessons from the project can be applied to all DERs, really. So states really are thinking about grid resilience funding. A lot of the state energy offices are the lead agencies for a lot of the grid resilience funding coming from the Department of Energy. And so they are interested in kind of figuring out how can they enable DERs on the grid without ignoring cyber risks. And what are the cyber risks? And what are some of the evolving threats and risks that they should be thinking about? And how can they mitigate against those threats and risks? So what are some of the mitigation measures? And then really the project is designed to educate our members and to provide tools for states on solar cybersecurity and really bring together not just the states, but also public and private entities that are thinking about solar and cybersecurity issues. This is just a different way to think about it, but our goals were to convene our members, to identify challenges, priorities, and mitigative actions in addressing solar cybersecurity issues, to then enable critical strategies and pathways for solutions, and really to facilitate the discussion among a lot of different members of this kind of issue, and create new relationships, and then create collaborative frameworks and model approaches that can be replicated across all the states. As I mentioned, state energy offices have different budget constraints, they have different foci. So how can we provide them with tools that work for all of them? These are the participants in our CATS advisory group. You can see there are either from state energy offices or public utility commissions or both. Those are the state member advisory groups. State members of the advisory group. We also have a range of private sector participants ranging from experts on cybersecurity, ranging from the Department of Energy Cybersecurity Office, the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Office at DOE, solar trade associations, manufacturers of microgrids, all kinds of different stakeholders that are interested in strengthening solar cybersecurity and are interested in having that dialogue. The project itself, we are actually kind of nearing the end, so we're in the dissemination outreach phase, but what we did is we really cataloged what are our members' needs, what are some of the perspectives from the industry, and then roadmap what kind of potential topics we could delve into, because clearly there are a lot of different things we could have talked about. That we then went through a lot of development of the tools, which I'll talk about in a minute. and now are in the phase to educate people about CATS, about solar cybersecurity, and about the tools, and really hopefully create a sustainable network for our members to continue this conversation, because this was just the start. This is not the, we solved all solar cybersecurity issues by any means. It was just having this conversation and kind of providing education and tools. And then with that last slide, I just wanted to show you, this is the tools that we have developed. They're all available on our website. We did start with kind of a user guide. So when one of the things that we heard a lot from our members is like, where do I start? This is such a huge topic. I don't know anything about cybersecurity. I don't know anything about how it relates to solar. So we did a literature review where we took available resources and put them into context and said, okay, if you know nothing about solar cybersecurity, here's where you should start. If you know a little bit, here's what you can read. And then we did the similar approach to the CATS toolkit. We started with the user guide, which explains each tool and tells you this is how you could use it going forward. We did then also, I did a companion piece to that where we thought about what kind of questions the utility regulators, the PUCs, could ask of utilities. A lot of times cybersecurity shows up in a rate case or in another proceeding. And so what are some of the pertinent questions that should be asked? One of the larger tools then is also a decision support tool. So it has 3 annexes. One is a standards quick guide, which includes kind of a rundown of here are some of the standards that you should be thinking about. This is how they're developed. Are they mandatory? Are they applicable? What is the process? This also includes kind of a photovoltaic solar engineering and system overview. So what does actually PV look like? Where are some of the risks points? What is it when you're thinking about cybersecurity that you should be thinking about in the context of PV? And then we also included a hypothetical solar cyber attack scenarios and impact write-up. So what are some of the potential vectors of cyber attack? What would that look like? Is there a huge impact if somebody hacks into a PV system on somebody's roof? Maybe not, but what if that PV system is on a hospital or some other critical infrastructure? A lot of our members are also engaged in exercising, so they prepare for emergencies through tabletop exercises. So we wrote a guidance document that they can then take some of those solar cybersecurity considerations and integrate them into exercising. We also did a write-up on what kind of workforce requirements there are when thinking about solar cybersecurity. And if states are interested in working groups, we did a case study and model guidance. California, for example, has a very successful model on thinking about these issues through a working group that they have compiled. So we use that as this is how you could implement that in your own state. And then we also did a write-up on how to procure solar assets with cybersecurity in mind and some of the state legislative options to enhance solar cybersecurity. So with that, I'll stop here. I know we have a limited amount of time, but I just wanted to quickly mention, and I should probably have done that at the outset, but so I was an ORISE fellow prior to coming to NASU. I've been with NASU for 4 years. And I will just quick plug for the ORISE Fellowship. I was at DOE for 3 years. I worked in the policy office there, as well as the Cybersecurity Energy Security Emergency Response Office, CSER. It was just an incredible time. I think I learned so much in those 3 years. And if you all have the opportunity to do a fellowship, I would highly recommend it. And I'm happy to talk more about my kind of pathway later on. But with that, I will turn it over to Grace.
Thanks, Kristen. We have some questions. Is that better? Can you guys hear me?
How's that? Good?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So your first question, how experience as ORI Science and Technology Policy Fellow at the DOE shape your perspective on the intersection of technology, policy, and what lessons from your fellowship do you bring to your current role at NACIO?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And I think one of the things that I really appreciated during my time as a fellow and kind of that thinking about that intersection of technology and policy in particular. And I think y'all had an additional question on kind of like, well, like policy, what does it matter for technology? I think it's so important like to think about the policy implications and how policy and technology interact, because I do believe there's so many great inventions out there, but if there's not a market for it and if there's not the right policy incentives, then those won't really be deployed. Like there's so much great research, but for me, it is that how do we get, you know, the research, the technologies that are being developed at DOE, at the national labs, and the private companies to market? And that's for me where policy and regulation comes in. So be it on the federal level or on the state level, I think there's such a critical role for policy and regulation. And I think that is what I really just started to appreciate at DOE, but now have taken to my position at NASIO. And that, you know, there's also such a critical role for the states. There's so much happening on the federal level, but if you look at the major policy incentives over the last few years, you know, the IRA and the IIJA, and so many funding opportunities, it really does come down to the state level for implementation. And so I really think that both policy and policy at the state level are so critical, and they really, having been at DOE, and now at NASIO, I just have a great appreciation for that.
So question number 2. Can you share an example of a successful initiative or collaboration that has had positive impact on state level energy policies?
Yes, sorry, it's hard to find the unmute button when you're sharing, slide sharing. So I think one of the things that is so amazing at NASIO is that you see that really direct impact on states. And one of my favorite examples is we have a state microgrid working group that we do together with NERUC as well. And we bring together states to talk about microgrids and how they could potentially implement microgrid programs and policies and regulations in their respective states. And Wisconsin is part of that working group, and they didn't have a microgrid program. And they took a lot of what they heard at the microgrid working group and lessons learned from New Jersey and Connecticut and other states that were more further along on the microgrid deployment side. And they really took lessons learned. For example, that is so critical to have feasibility studies in order to really think about deployment, and took all those and integrated that in their new microgrid program that they then launched. So, you know, sometimes you think, oh, just bringing, you know, people together to talk or states together to talk is not that important, but it really does matter what people hear, and they take, you know, the information that they glean from their respective colleagues very seriously. And so it was really kind of amazing to see that this working group had such a big role in implementing a microgrid program in a state.
Did anyone have any questions they want to ask for themselves? And I have one more question for you. Did anyone want to come up and have any questions? No? All right, so my last question is, in your role leading NACIO's electricity program, you focus on issues related to generation, transmission, and distribution. How do you approach informing and educating states on these complex issues?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the challenges, I think, is you said, you know, they're very complex topics. I think the other challenge to that is a lot of states, and I mentioned that in the beginning, have different levels of expertise when it comes to these issues, and they have different levels of or different goals, you know, from the state policy side. Not all states, you know, have clean energy as the main goal. Maybe the main goal is resilience, or the main goal is economic development. So, you know, the state energy offices, being very close to the governors, get their cue from the governors and their policy priorities. And so having these kind of challenges, not just policy challenges, but technical challenging topics, what we really try to do is kind of provide information to all state energy offices. So we for example had just have recently developed a distribution planning kind of guide to state energy offices, because the recent legislation requires them now to get engaged in transmission and distribution planning. And a lot of them came to us and said, hey, we don't know what that looks like. And we have a staff of 2. So, you know, tell us how we can engage in distribution planning. So breaking it down and saying, hey, if you have the opportunity to participate in a docket at the PUC, that is already engaging in distribution planning. Or if you have a microgrid program, that is impacting the distribution system, so you are actively engaging in distribution planning. And breaking down the topic to very manageable and action oriented items. I think that is what we at least try to do at NASIO, what I try to do at NASIO, because it can get really overwhelming, and you know, I wouldn't be able to do it without my amazing team too. So it's just good to have, you know, multiple people working on the same subject and supporting each other. And so really grateful to be working with amazing people like Grace.
Thank you so much for your responses. And we're going to turn it over to Ms. Grace Lowe.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Aisha, and to Simone for having us. Really glad to be with you all here. And as Aisha said, I'm Grace Lowe. I'm a senior program manager at NASIO, and I work on our clean energy programs across a number of different areas, including community solar, which is what I'm going to talk to you all about today. And I think just to help frame it, as Kirsten sort of mentioned, maybe you know, the purpose of this conversation is to really help demonstrate how the amazing research you all are doing can apply in the policy context and really impact people. I read through a few of your abstracts, and it's incredible work. So we're sort of on the policy side and have sort of a broad bird's eye view of what states are doing. And that's been really fascinating and engaging for me, but really, we always try to elevate you know, excellent research and connect states with resources to help inform their policies and programs. So before I get started, I'm sure most of you are familiar with community solar as a concept, but in our work, we typically refer to the DOE definition, which is any solar project or purchasing program within a geographic area in which the benefits of the solar project flow to multiple customers. And so ideally, community solar provides a way to kind of get around some of those barriers to access that rooftop solar sometimes creates, such as not having or having a roof that needs repair, not having you know, suitable location for sunlight, renting your home and not having control over that, or just the upfront cost of capital to install solar on your home. And so community solar provides this other avenue of accessing the benefits of bill savings. However, in practice, this model has sometimes, you know, been functioning still as a premium product. And so wealthier households have been more likely to or have taken advantage of these programs and have had greater access. And so states and partners have recognized this gap and are working to help develop programs and policies and incentives to make sure that community solar is actually benefiting those who could use the energy savings and other benefits the most. And so to help support states in this effort, and Kirsten, if you could move to the next slide. Thank you. So one of the ways we're helping support states on this is through the National Community Solar Partnership, which is a coalition led by the Department of Energy, Solar Energy Technologies Office, as well as the National Renewable Energy Lab, to really bring together states and other stakeholders and help address these gaps and help expand access to what they call the meaningful benefits of community solar. So not only household savings, but broader access, resilience and grid benefits, community ownership, as well as workforce development and entrepreneurship opportunities. So NCSP has this big goal of getting $1 billion in energy bill savings, or the equivalent of that, to 5 million households by 2025, which is a big goal. And NASIO and our team working on community solar is helping support DOE on 2 different initiatives that are part of NCSP. The first is the States Collaborative, which brings together state offices from across the country to talk through community solar policies and programs, what challenges they're facing, and access TA from the national labs. And then we are also supporting on what they call the Low Income Clean Energy Connector Tool, which is an online platform that NREL is developing and that DOE is leading to automatically connect eligible households with community solar projects in their area that have consumer protections baked in and that have meaningful energy savings. And so as part of that work, we're supporting several pilot states and advising states, working with Illinois, with New Mexico, Colorado, New York, New Jersey, and DC to kind of pilot this tool. And then the hope is to expand it nationally so that folks who are enrolled in the Low Income Energy Assistance Program can get connected easily with projects and help address that customer acquisition barrier. So that's one sort of piece of our community solar work. And Kirsten, if you could go to the next slide. Another big piece is the Inclusive Shared Solar Initiative, which started back in 2020 before the pandemic. And it's a convening of state energy offices and state LIHEAP offices in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and DC. And it's coordinated by NASIO as well as the National Energy Assistance Directors Association, or NEADA, and also funded by DOE CETO. And the goal is really to bring together state energy offices and their counterpart LIHEAP office in the state to test out and scale up innovative models for community solar that really expand access for LIHEAP eligible households. And so if you could go to the next slide. Just to give you an idea of the roles that state energy offices and state LIHEAP offices play in the community solar space. State energy offices, as Kirsten mentioned, are often close to the governor's office so they can advise and engage them on policy. In addition to legislators and regulators, they often develop and sometimes implement community solar programs and policies and incentives. And they're also conveners of a lot of different stakeholders relevant in the community solar space, from utilities to developers, subscriber management organizations, community-based organizations, and the like. And so that's their role. And then the state LIHEAP office role is really to inform policy and develop programs and take the grant from the federal government and distribute it and make sure it's running smoothly, trying to streamline access so that households don't face additional barriers to getting energy assistance. And LIHEAP offices are also really key in elevating the needs of low-income customers because they work with them every day. And we've also had a lot of conversations about how to make sure that community solar is factored into that benefit calculation appropriately so that customers are only saving money. And so together, these agencies can work together to expand access for community solar. And my last slide is just a few examples of the innovative policy and program approaches that our pilot states or our partner states are taking on. So in Minnesota, they've actually updated their LIHEAP or Energy Assistance Program form to include a section on community solar. So it's incorporated into the energy burden calculation, which determines the benefit amount. And then they can also select a community solar garden as a vendor. So they can use their assistance dollars to help them subscribe to a project. Wisconsin is working really closely with rural cooperatives as well as CAP agencies to really connect with a certain group in a low-income area and build that trust. So the logo that you see up there, they actually did a bunch of focus groups and meetings really early on in the process to make sure that the messages were resonating and that it was accessible and that folks knew what they were signing up for. And Wisconsin actually, their project just went live this month. So customers will start receiving the energy savings on their bill starting when they receive their first bill in February. And then lastly, in DC, they are testing a really innovative approach with a community resilience hub. So they're building a microgrid project that has solar and storage, and it's going to help the center provide different services such as charging cell phones, refrigerating medications, especially because the neighborhood is very vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And then lastly, I'll just mention that DC has sort of a unique approach in that their LIHEAP office and their state energy office are actually within the same department. So they've been closely coordinating and providing a lot of insights to the other states that we're working with. And they've adopted an opt-out approach. So anyone signed up for LIHEAP in the district can automatically get, they estimate $500 annually in energy savings. So there's no extra form to fill out. There's education so that they know what they're getting, but it's a pretty seamless process and something that other states are starting to consider as well. That's all I have, but I'm happy to take questions and also talk more about how I got to NASIO and what else I work on there. Thank you.
All right. So do you have any questions for Ms. Lowe?
Yeah.
All right.
So
Stand.
yeah.
You want a mic?
Please stand. Thank you.
I'm Matthew from Georgia Tech. What is the ownership structure of these community projects like long term? Because I know that the funding, grants been publicly funded, but in the long term, what do they start to look like? Is it more of a cooperative ownership by the communities themselves, or are they still owned and operated by like the state, energy codes?
That's a great question. And there are lots of models out there, which makes it both complicated, but also, I think, really interesting. So the Wisconsin model that I talked about, the solar farm is actually owned and operated by the rural co-op. And then the Community Action Agency is they bought into a portion of the panels, forget how many, but then each of those panels, the Community Action Agency does the work on the back end of distributing the benefits and making sure that the bills are include the energy savings. In other states, the developer owns the project and works with either a subscriber management organization or the utility to get the benefit out. And then states, are often providing grant funding or incentives through renewable energy credits or through a program. They can also institute programs and policies that create a carve out for low and moderate income customers. So requiring that developers who are taking advantage of the program are actually serving those households, or at least a certain percentage of those households. So that's just a few of the models, but the community ownership piece is really interesting. And I think people are starting to figure out how that will work. Like we had a conversation back in December in person in Madison, and the CAP agency that we're working with was chatting a lot with the Habitat for Humanity organization that was there, a local chapter, about how to maybe, take it out of the rural co-op and actually just build it and own it on the Habitat for Humanity Center and and have just more ownership over that. So, yeah.
Video Bay, Arizona.
Nice to meet you.
And I was just curious what your educational background was, and what you're studying, what you're interested in.
Yeah, good question. I started off doing environmental studies in college, so a very broad sort of liberal arts degree. But I did focus sort of in the psychology and communication side, so more the social sciences of environmental studies. And I initially out of college went and worked for an energy efficiency consulting firm, which was a lot of technical, somewhat tedious work, looking at LED lights and evaluating their energy savings potential, making sure they met all the specifications to be on this qualified products list. I also did a little bit of electric vehicle work there. So it was a lot of good exposure to the world of energy efficiency and utilities and EVs. But I sort of decided that I wanted to shift into more of the policy space. So, so just before COVID, I applied to grad school and focused on environmental policy there, did a master's of environmental management, and really focused my coursework on a lot of energy topics, just because that was kind of what I had real world experience with. And then NASIO just came across when I was doing my job search, just because I saw that a lot of states were doing great work on clean energy. And at the time, I think IIJA had passed, but the Inflation Reduction Act had not yet passed. So just a lot of momentum, and I could see, a good role for states, and I wanted to be in DC. So that was a way I could kind of work at the state level, but be in DC.
About people that they are against solar for community solar. That means, so some of the households, because of lower level of education, they think that solar is dangerous. We have faced the same issue for our community solar budget, and we have heard from the community leaders participate in the community solar because they are afraid, and they kind of think that solar is dangerous, and they're not convinced of it. So did you face the same issue or not?
Yeah, that has come up, maybe not the dangerous part, but there is a lot of skepticism about community solar, just, I think because of the way it's been deployed in the past. So, if you get a knock on your door saying, hey, sign up for this, it's free, it'll save you money. Folks don't always believe that because they've been burned in the past, or they've had other sort of third-party people come to their door and try to sell them something. And so the lack of coordination and education and consumer protections has made it challenging. But one of the main sort of pillars of our work on the Clean Energy Connector tool is to make sure that households are only connected with projects that have gone through sort of a pretty rigorous review, that the developer has been vetted, that the project is going to be actually producing savings for them, that there's no bad terms or hard to read language in the contract, so that communities know what they're signing up for and are getting benefit. We've also seen in Illinois a really positive model of having what they call grassroots educators, so people who are in the community who are being paid to do outreach with their community and kind of explain the benefits of community solar, help answer questions. Sure, there's always going to be people who are not supportive or don't want to get involved, but I think those are a couple of ways that we can start to address those concerns. Yeah.
I have one here. What have been the most effective strategies in increasing uptake in low-income solar from your experience?
Yeah, there are a lot. I mean, I would say the coordination between state energy offices and state light heap offices is key. I would also say, having a carve out or some kind of incentive to encourage developers and subscription managers to reach those populations. And then the opt-out piece is also huge as a way to increase uptake. DC, I think, has a goal of reaching over 100,000 households with their community solar program. And so that's kind of why they went for the opt-out approach. But
And so my last question, and you may have answered this in your first question from the young man here, but why do only California and Maryland offer low-income solar? And do you see any other states starting to offer this program in the future?
yeah, so I think if I'm not wrong, and I don't know, I've mostly focused on community solar, but it falls under solar. So I think there are more states, many more states offering low-income programs for community solar. I think there's an NREL Sharing the Sun report that's been really helpful to us that tracks policies and programs across all states. So there's 22 states and the District of Columbia that have enabling legislation to allow for virtual net metering. And then there's 17 states and DC that have specific low and moderate income provisions, policies, or programs. And I would say even without enabling legislation, there are still a lot of opportunities for, say in Wisconsin, like the rural co-op to build a community solar farm, or for smaller pilot projects. Florida, I think, is actually, even though they don't have enabling legislation at the state level, their Florida Power and Light has, I think, some of the most installed capacity of any state. So we're working to help expand that. And I think, especially with the Inflation Reduction Act Solar for All program, I think we'll see a large increase in the number of community solar and solar programs, and especially programs for low-income households. I believe it was $7 billion total for solar through the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. And so states and cities and tribes and other applicants will be finding out in March about their applications. So lots to happen. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right.
Also, does the university students have the opportunities to get involved in the installment, maintenance, and the management of like the internship opportunity?
Yeah. And you mean installing
Like the
community
installment, management?
Definitely. I mean, I don't know of any opportunities off the top of my head, but I know there's a huge need for solar workforce, including installers, electricians, maintenance workers. And a lot of that connects with other sectors of the energy industry. And a piece of my work is really focused on workforce development, and a lot of states are grappling with how do we actually get these projects and programs built out? How do we make sure that there's enough people to do the work? So yeah, I would definitely look into it if that's something you're interested in.
Second one, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, besides the low-income household, I think our students can come ourselves into the low-income class. So have you ever considered deploying the solar panel in the university student's dorm roof?
Yeah, I think universities can be great partners for installing solar. I'm sure there are a lot of models out there on how to get the benefits to flow to students and people who work at the universities and colleges. I think probably most universities use the solar as a way to offset their energy costs, but especially in DC, one of the biggest challenges is the lack of space. Just because it's a small city, it's very condensed. And so there's not like a big farmland where you can go build a huge solar farm. And so rooftop space is key. And I feel like universities could also be sort of a resilience hub in that way, and provide benefits with solar and storage. So that's really cool.
Yeah, Grace, if I can add to that, one of the universities in Maryland, the Maryland Energy Administration, the State Energy Office, has a great resilience program, and they fund a microgrid project at Frostburg University, and it's actually the students that are designing and implementing the microgrid project. So they're not just using it to enhance resilience and clean energy at the university, but they're really using it as a teaching tool and have kind of built it into the curriculum. And I highly encourage you to look at that project because I think it's so neat, and I would hope that more universities are thinking about something like that.
Any other questions? Right, and I think that's it with the questions. So we're going to turn it back over to Dr. Soso.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I was so glad to hear the participants really excited and asking so many questions. And I thank you for trudging out in the snow, in the cold, to be there in person, Grace. That speaks to your, it definitely speaks to your dedication.
Yes. It really wasn't too bad. The roads are okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they haven't even plowed my street, so
Oh,
I'm
wow.
glad that you were able to make it. And I thank you both very much so. I know it's a busy day, and all the thoughtfulness that you put into developing the information that you shared. I want to say to the students as we close out this day, I hope that you gained a lot of insight in a variety of areas, and you know, how is it that you're able to communicate with others what it is that you want to do, and how do you get to that point, and how do you utilize all of us that are now part of your networks to do so, and utilize each other in advancing your research and advancing your career. And I would appreciate if you took a moment to do the survey for day 2. And thank you all for completing the survey from day 1. I think there are some questions that I probably clarified a little bit better for day 2 for you, so that it makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to share my screen so that you can get a copy of the surveys. And before I do that, because that's the last thing I'm going to do before I turn off my screen, I want to wish you all safe returns to the places in which you have come from. If you have any issue returning, like Aisha has said before, we are here. Please reach out. Make sure that you get my cell number from Aisha. You know, if you need anything, please feel free to reach out. If you need to know, you know, how to get on the metro or whatever it is you might need, we're here. So please feel free to ask. And if you need anything, please let any of us know at any time. So it has been a pleasure. I appreciate you all. And get ready to whip out those phones so you can scan this barcode.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Oh, anytime. Thank you.